Now this isn't a record day, but I was lying in bed this morning going through my phone and I was just reading some of the comments on my channel, and one of them on my previous video was by John, and it said about living in empathy for the countryside and nature, and he was saying it's true that we shouldn't look outwards and try to change nature. We should look inwards and try to change ourselves. Now this might be brief, or I might just go off on one, I don't know, but it's given me a bit of food for thought, or at least something to base a video about, because that's very true. We shouldn't look out and try to change nature as a species. We should look inwards and try to change ourselves. Very simple thing to say, not very simple thing to do, but when you think about it, man in the shape of Homo sapien has been on this earth for about 300,000 years, and really in the last about 300 years is when we've started attempting to change nature, change the landscape, change our environment to suit ourselves. Before then, everything we used came from nature. The timber, rocks, medicines came from the plants, food from the animals. We lived in this symbiotic relationship with nature when we did not alter the infrastructure that kept renewing itself. We actually did it a favour. We thinned out woodland, then the woodland grew. We grew and we bred and culled animals, and it just all ticked over. And then along came the Industrial Revolution, when we started inventing things and finding things and discovering what we could do with the elements that came out of the ground. And things changed. And we changed the environment, and to some extent we changed the climate, I think. Now, I'm no eco-zealot at all. I have my own opinions on climate change and global warming, and they probably don't fit into the student idea of it. I believe that a lot of climate change is due to natural things that are happening in the universe in general and the way that the Earth moves through space. I also think that we have some bearing on it as well, but I do think that the countries that are self-flagellating and donning sackcloth and ashes are really the countries that are virtuous and rich, but can do little about it because we are contributing little to any pollution. But you try to tell a bod in India or some South American country that's in poverty, and he's trying like mad to feed his family, and the only way he can do it is to dig minerals out of the ground and burn coal and burn timber and pollute the air and pollute the atmosphere. You try telling him that he's guilty from our little gilded cage here in the West. You try telling him that when that's the only way that he can keep a roof over his head. He's just going to ignore you, because we can tell him not to do that. We could probably stop him doing that. He would suffer. We would carry on at our dinner parties telling each other how virtuous we are. So it's more complicated, isn't it? There is climate change. Man is responsible for climate change. The Earth itself, space, the universe, the galaxy is responsible for climate change. I don't think there's a great deal we can do it, and I don't think there's a great deal we, as small contributors, can do about it. We could bring our net zero down to zero. It'd have little influence, would it? When you've got India and China and all the developing countries and the countries in South America, all the ones whose people are living under corrugated steel roofs, eating whatever they can find, and that still goes on. Let's not kid ourselves. But I've got that out of the way, and I don't really want any discussions about that online, because I think discussions about things like that are best left for living rooms with a glass of whiskey and a roaring fire, not here on the interwebby. But like I say, man has been around for 300,000 years, and it's only in the last 300 years that I think we've started making a difference, making a change. That's 1,000th of the time that man has been around. Has he been making an impact on not only the climate but the environment? We'll leave the climate for another day, but we concentrate on the environment, because I think that is where John was coming from. In 300 years we have changed the landscape. Before then, yes, we were clearing land for farming, but it was all done sympathetically with nature. I think people actually, because man was so much more in tune with nature, because he realised that he relied on nature, he relied on looking after nature, being the curator of nature for his well-being and his food and his building materials. So he didn't abuse nature, he worshipped nature. So many traditions that go back, wassailing over here and all sorts of different rituals are all born in respect for nature. Respect for Mother Nature, worshipping Mother Nature, telling Mother Nature that we're trying to look after, we're trying to be good little ants. And that's what it's all about. And we don't do that anymore, do we? People still do that, but it's seen as a novelty, where you will get people, mummers and people like that, carrying out rituals in the countryside, and then with people come round in the thousands in the four-wheel drives, pumping out fumes all over the place, to stand about and watch them as a novelty and laugh and talk amongst themselves about how long this will go out. Isn't it time we got rid of all these silly little traditions? They don't mean anything in the modern world. Oh, what silly little ants we are. We are walking to our own demise. But I think we have been responsible for all the change, all the scarring on the planet, all the change on the planet, all the what we call natural disasters on the planet, all the forest fires, all the heathland fires. We've played a part in most of those when it didn't happen before. All the strip mines and open cast mining. It didn't happen before, but it's necessary. I worked on oil rigs, so I'm actually big on drilling. I think we should drill. I'm quite big on fossil fuels. I think there's a place for it. Perhaps we can try to phase them out. In fact, yes, we can try to phase them out, because they're a finite thing anyway. They're a finite resource anyway. We are going to use them up, but we need to find other methods of fueling our world before we start cutting off our nose to spite our face and dragging ourselves into economic disasters by just banning things outright, so that our politicians can appear to be virtuous. We are changing the world. We are responsible for the scars on the world. We are responsible for the growing cities on the world, but there's nothing we can do about that. We can look outwards and see the world changing, and we can look in. We can look in, but I think when we look in as individuals. We can play our part. There's no way around it. We are going to change the world. As life goes on, in another 500 to 1,000 years, it's going to look totally different. The landscape will have changed, the landscape will have gone. Man will appreciate the world around him in a different way, and he will think he is the curator of a beautiful landscape then, when all he is a curator of a changed landscape. A landscape that may be sustainable, may be beautiful, but isn't what the landscape was a mere 300 years ago, when we've been around 300,000 years. We've changed it so quickly. So yes, it's going to change. I'm just thinking about this comment that John made this morning. It's only an hour ago I read this. But I thought, while it's on my mind, I want to just talk about this. Yes, we need to look out. We need to conserve the world. We need to do our best for the world. We cannot just go out and be vandals. We cannot go out and say, I am man, I am going to do this. We need, whatever we do, there are things that are necessary. We need fuel for our industries until we change them for a better option. We need land to build on for a growing population. Nothing we can do about that until we start colonising Mars. But we've got to do it sympathetically. John was right. We need to look out at the world and preserve that. But we do that by looking in. We cannot just be empty vessels that just say, I need this now, so I want this now, and don't consider the side effects of what that is. We can't just go bimbling through the world, ripping things apart without thinking about the consequences, because there will be consequences. So yes, we need to look at the world around us and appreciate the world around us and keep the world around us as beautiful as we can, but it will change, because the world's changing, the population's changing, technology's changing, industry's changing, science is changing, things are developing. There's nothing we can do. That's quite natural, but we need to start by looking in and running our own lives as efficiently and as kindly and as beneficially to the environment as we can, without going mad about it. But we can just be kind to nature. I think that's it. I think basically we don't need to look at doing specific things and saying, I will do this, I will do this, I will make this list of bullet points that I will do to save the planet. I think if we just have empathy for the world around us, everything else follows on. Everything else comes naturally. We won't as individuals make a great change, but there are a few billion of us, and if we in the rich Western world can be a bit more empathetic to the world around us, that's all we can do. Change will come. Change isn't always for the better, but if we show a little bit of empathy for the world around us, then we're doing our bit, and then we can at the end of the day we can say, well, I tried, I did my bit, I did what I could. I think I made a difference. But we are never, in an unequal world, we are never going to be able to change things completely, because we over here, we in our civilization, we sitting on our computers watching me talking into this very expensive camera will never be able to understand what it is for somebody who has nothing, who is lucky to have a corrugated roof over the head, who's no job security, who wonders where the next meal's going to come from. And if somebody says, right, there's a great big pile of coal over there, and burn that and you can eat for a week, but that is going to pollute the atmosphere. He's going to burn that to feed his family, isn't he? Of course he is. And so would you in his position. So there you go, that was a bit of a ramble. I'll probably have to edit most of that out, because I have rambled and rambled and rambled, so it may only end up being a couple of minutes, but it was worth a ramble. Look after the world as much as you can, people. And that just means being a decent person. It doesn't mean going out throwing paint at government buildings. That probably causes more damage to the environment than anything else. It just means being a good person, living in empathy with nature, understanding nature, appreciating nature, taking it in and looking round and realising that everything, the grass around me, the trees, everything is living, is alive. The soil on the ground there is a complete ecosystem of things that are alive, that are living, eating, multiplying, breeding, dying. Everything, everywhere around you is alive. Everywhere around you is moving independently. We're walking on this planet that is moving like that below our feet. When we walk across the soil and through the grass, it's moving, it's alive, it's changing, it's living, it's growing, it's dying. And then others are coming to take its place. It's very much like us. So if you want to have sympathy and empathy with your fellow man, have sympathy and empathy with the landscape around you. And that's all we can do. We look in. We don't look to change the world around us. We look to change the world around us as little as we can. We know that we have to. We can't get away from that. That's inevitable. But we have to do it as little as we can and change our own attitudes. And if we do that, we can live in sympathy with the world. And we can keep it green and pleasant and lovely for a lot longer, for generations to come, rather than knocking 7 shares of shit out of it until it knocks 7 shares of shit out of us and starts all over again. And with those rude words, we shall carry on our walk. We shall see you on the flip. Peace and love. Can you hear that? Walking at the side of a little stream.